We're getting ready to enter Mandolin Brothers in Staten Island, New York. Going to see Stan Jay, the proprietor, take a look at some of his fine instruments and talk about the history of this very well-known music store, world-famous music store. So we're going to go and see if Jay's at his desk and maybe get a tour and look at some of these great instruments that he has in here. Let's go. Morning, Stan.
Hey, Pat.
Pat Costello from Chris Good.
Good to meet you again.
We're up to...
We are ready for your visit,
Good.
and we'll tell you what we tell every single person who walks through that front door, and that is that you can make yourself feel at home, and you can play every instrument in the place, and there's 1,000 of them, so that might take a while. I'm glad you're here early, and you can ask a million questions, and I mean that.
We plan to.
Well, I hope so.
Thank you.
Sure, welcome. Come on in. Yeah, that's right. Sign his waiver.
Morning, guys.
How you doing? How you doing today? What you got?
It's good to be back here, Stan. I got to tell you, about 13 years ago, Patrick and I come up and left with two wonderful instruments, a National tenor guitar and a Dobro 33H.
Metal body, right?
Yes, and Patrick has literally played the finish off the neck on that instrument. And I also have a Martin tenor guitar that I got from you, which is, I play it more than anything I've ever had. I love it. It's a wonderful instrument.
You bought the old mahogany 017T?
Yes.
And
Yes.
what year is that?
I believe it's 1952 or 51.
It's probably about doubled in price. Do you remember what you paid for it?
I think I paid $600 for it.
The Martin tenor guitars are now going for about $1,100.
Okay.
So it's
Good investment.
doing well. Yeah. it's
So
doing very
a
well.
good instrument is always an investment, isn't
A
it?
good American-made instrument is always a good investment, we think. We don't see growth in the imports. We do see growth in the American-mades, which is why we specialize in American-made.
That's my next question. I do believe that you only handle
Well,
American-made
there are a
instruments.
few exceptions. We carry Ramirez guitars, which are made in Madrid, Spain. We carry Hofner Beetle basses that are made in Germany. And we carry Gretsch, which is made in Japan. It's an American brand, has been since the turn of the last century. But they're still doing very high quality work, and the name is so important. We feel they're doing actually better sounding, better looking guitars than they made in the 60s. And better playing as well.
The place is amazing to walk into. There are several rooms here.
It's a little overwhelming for people at first. They don't quite know what to make of it, but we try to direct them to the area that they're most interested in. Or we'll take them on a tour, which we'll do with you.
That's what we'd like to do, take a short tour. You tell the story, when you started, what led you to to this great business. And I'll throw in my 2 cents from time to time.
Okay, that sounds like a deal.
Let's have some fun.
Okay, well right now the first room that you walked into is our reception area. And it's just Janet and I mostly at our computers trying to get work done as much as we can. We want to talk a little bit later about our website, and I've invited my wife Bee down, who is our webmaster, and she'll walk you through the website, and you'll see how it works and what we have on it and what we feature. Bee also makes all my shirts. I have about 50 of these. They're all different. I buy the material. She says that you can't drag me out of the fabric stores. But if I find material that works like this does, then I'll buy that.
Very nice.
Very often I get the line from the lady at the cash register, what are you going to use this material for? That means it's working. That's good stuff. The first room after the reception area that you walk into is classical guitars, 12-string guitars, Taylor guitars, and Guild guitars. And so everything on this floor is acoustic, and we'll cover a lot of acoustic instruments. If you follow me, we'll go into our 4-course room. The instruments in this room have 4 courses. That means that even if they have 8 strings, such as a mandolin, they only have 4 sets of strings, even though they're doubled. So the instruments in this room would include the entire mandolin family, and that is comprised of the soprano, the alto, the tenor, and the baritone. The soprano being the regular mandolin, and this is a Gibson mandolin from 1924. It was made during the time that Lloyd Lohr was working at the plant, and it's called a snakehead because it has an inverted peg head that gets skinnier as it goes up instead of getting fatter. We think these are the best sounding A models that Gibson ever made. And they're teardrop with an oval sound hole. But we have all sorts of other mandolins. This is a Vega cylinder back. It's got a very unusual back. This is a mandola. I picked up the right instrument. This would be the alto voice of the mandolin family. It's tuned 1/5 lower than the mandolin, and it's a little bit bigger and has a little bit longer scale, the scale being the distance from the nut to the saddle.
Is that the same as a tenor banjo?
Yeah, the tuning is exactly the same as a tenor banjo tuning. A, D, G, C, where the A is the highest note. Mandolin has become universal. There are more mandolins being used in rock bands today than ever before. You hear mandolin all over the place. You hear it in commercials on TV, and that thrills me. If you're hearing mandolin on commercials on TV, it's becoming mainstream, and I'm delighted, because when we first started, and we're going to cover your question about how we got started little by little.
Yeah, the name.
The name, I know, that's right. We realized that virtually every guitar store in the United States was the first word was someone's name, either first or last, and the second word was the word guitars or the word music. And when you think about it, that covers just about everybody. We felt that was boring and trite, and we eschew the boring and trite. So we decided that mandolin would be our first name because no one was thinking about the mandolin at all. I originally had a partner when I first started this in 1971. It certainly sounds like a long time ago for someone so young to be saying it. And because we felt very good about starting a company, two guys in their late 20s, I think I was 27 at the time, we decided to use brothers because we were brothers in spirit. And so it became Mandolin Brothers, and even though that's an unusual sounding name for a company, it has caught on, and at this point, it's become synonymous with high-end American fretted instruments. Okay, we talked about the first room that we came into, which was Taylor guitars, mostly used, and Guild guitars, and classical guitars, and 12-string guitars. This room is entirely C.F. Martin and Gibson, the two biggest brands that we carry. We try to stock virtually every model of acoustic guitar that both those companies make. We do our best. We don't always have all of them, but we do our best to come close. We want our customers to know when they come here, if they ask for a particular guitar, they're very likely to find it. And so you'll see, if you scan the room, you'll see Martin guitars in the low level. The Martin Guitar Company is one of the few American companies that make guitars in the 500, 600, 700, and 800 range. And also at the high end, which would start around at the street price, which is the retail discount price that we sell at, in the 1100 range, and they go up from there. Martin, no matter what range they are, can be depended on for extremely good sound, extremely long sustain, tremendous warmth, and great playability with a very fast, low profile or V-shaped neck. We have, again, something for everybody. If it's here, if someone's looking for it, they can usually find it. Gibson is also making, in our opinion, they're making the best acoustic guitars that they have produced in 40 to 45 years. They recreated the Gibson SJ200, which was last made in the 1950s. This is a Gibson J200, of course, the famous image of the guitar that Gary Davis used and Dave Van Ronk initially started out using. And it typifies what you expect from the company. It's gigantic sounding. Also not in tune, but still beautiful sounding, and with all sorts of elegant appointments. My first good guitar was a J200. I was in college, and I think I was just coming out of the initial Kingston Trio influence and wanted to learn to play ragtime guitar and fingerstyle guitar, and I was working in a music store during my summer vacations at Rondo Music in Union, New Jersey, and while I was working there for Christmas vacation, a person came in with a J200 that he had bought as a beach guitar. And so there was sand in the guitar and there was sand in the case, and because he had taken it out to the beach, there were crazing lines all over it, and I said to the owner of the store, "Can I buy this?" And he said, "Okay," and we came up with a price. I used my entire salary for that vacation, and my dad lent me the other $125, and so I ended up with the first very, very good instrument, and found that that helped my playing. My playing grew exponentially. It just took off from there. Having a great guitar makes you want to play, and it doesn't have to be a really expensive guitar, but it should be a very good guitar. And that's the key to becoming a better player, is to own something that you love. And whenever you open the case, you sigh and say, "Gee, that's beautiful," and that's what makes you pick it up and want to play it more. It doesn't matter what it is, and it doesn't matter if it's terribly expensive. If it's a good instrument, you're going to want to use it a lot.
We have in here.
We call this the boutique room, and this is our name for the small builders. The small builders are now able to make a living. Back in the 1970s, the brands that were available to the public were Gibson and Guild and Martin, and that was about it. You took your pick, and they were all good brands, and we're glad that they were out there. But if you were an independent builder working at that time, you found it very hard to pay your rent and to have enough money left over to buy materials with. Nowadays, the notion of the independent builder is becoming quite viable, and there are a number of them working steadily to make great handmade guitars of the type that we love to play. Bill Collins is in Austin, Texas, and makes guitars that are spoken of extremely highly by bluegrass players and by finger players alike. His guitars are extremely articulate and made with gorgeous woods, and when you pick them up and play them, they feel to the player like a guitar made in the 30s and the 40s. And that's one of the highest compliments we can pay a guitar. The golden era of guitar building clearly was the late 20s through the World War II. And if a modern builder can make a guitar at that level, that builder definitely deserves the applause that comes with that sort of product. Another builder is Santa Cruz Guitar Company. Located in Santa Cruz, California, they've been around 20 years or so under the direction of Richard Hoover. And they also make absolutely superb instruments. They're not only loud, but they have a warmth of tone that makes you feel like you're playing a much older instrument. They make a model called the Tony Rice model, which would be this. And it's named after the guitarist who is so widely known in bluegrass as being one of the most talented and expressive of all modern guitar players using a flat pick. He can make a guitar sound using a flat pick the way fingerstylists make guitar. And you say, how can a flat pick move that fast? But it's not only that, it's how melodic he thinks about the tunes that he plays. And what comes out has always fascinated me. I love his music and own all his albums. And
he's one of the great.
He is indeed. And for him to have allowed Santa Cruz to essentially make a guitar that is built to the same dimensions as his 1935 Martin guitar, including having the large sound hole, which the prior owner, Clarence White, had, is remarkable that they've been so successful in duplicating the sound of a 1935 D28 guitar. This is Loudon guitars. Loudon guitars are, again, one of our few imports. They're made in Northern Ireland, and they are unique. They have all wooden bindings. There is not a bit of metal on this instrument except for the tuning machines. It's all made from natural materials.
Northern Ireland.
Mm-hmm. They come in about 5 different sizes, ranging from the jumbo down to a small body guitar. But neither of them lack any warmth or volume. They're tremendously rich sounding instruments. This is called an OM, and that stands for Orchestra Model. The OM is the combination of the auditorium-sized body, which is 15 inches across, and the dreadnought scale length, neck, which is 25.4 inches. It was originally invented in 1929 by C.F. Martin, and it's been looked upon ever since as a paradigm of what a fine fingerstyle guitar can be. This is a beautifully made instrument. Feel the finish.
I can see it's like looking through a piece of glass.
I know, it's just
the finish on it.
Perfect. It's very smooth. There's no sense
and
of...
the name of these folks
They're Huss and Dalton.
And that's a very reasonable price.
For a handmade instrument. It is. It's totally handmade, and it sells for $24.50 approximately. And abalone inlaid ebony bridge pens, abalone inlaid sound hole rosette, and absolutely unique. No one is using that inlay pattern that I know.
And it passes the
rigorous
Brothers inspection. Point out at this moment that we are an unusually set up
place of business. We have 11 rooms, and they're all contiguous, which means they touch one another. They're all connected to one another. It isn't a big box. It isn't a huge amount of space where you have to travel from area to area. You just go from room to room, and each room has its own focus. This section was once our clerical offices. It was once our shipping department and our customer service and our secretary and our overstock, and we were able to refurbish it about 4 years ago and expand into this new section of 6 more rooms. The room that we're in now has resophonic instruments and open back banjos. On this wall we have the guitars of the Dobro company. Dobro is now owned by the Gibson company and still making extremely high quality. There are bluegrass instruments, and when they're metal, then there are blues instruments. But no matter what they do, Dobro is still at the top of their craft, and for bluegrass, it's become a generic term. Unfortunately, they prefer that people realize that it's actually a trademark term, that Dobro stands for the founders, who were the Dopera brothers, D-O-B, D-O for Dopera and B-R-O for brothers, and that is what sets them apart. It's really not a generic term, Dobro, it's a brand name. In back of me is our acoustic electric room. Every instrument in this room has a pickup system. Some are more sophisticated and some are less sophisticated, but the guitars made by Gibson and C.F. Martin and Taylor are also available, as you can see, with this very complicated looking but simple to use preamp made by the Fishman Company, including all sorts of things. Phase and notch. The notch filter, we should point out, is how you remove feedback. If you're in a room and there's too much bounce or too live an area and you are getting feedback from the speakers, you can try to get that frequency out of the sound so as to make that feedback stop. Extremely elegant instrument. Everything about this, from the ebony fretboard to the pre-war style pickguard to the carved ebony bridge, which is extremely smooth and elegant, to the abalone rosette, to the cutaway, makes it very useful for the modern player in a band who seeks to have a fine acoustic instrument that can also be played amplified. On this side we have the National Guitar Company. National guitars are made now in San Luis Obispo, California. And they were always in California. Actually, National started out as a spin-off of Dobro, and history repeats itself. The new company is a spin-off of former Dobro employees as well. That's really something. I know, it's quite remarkable. This is a model called a Delphi, and the Delphi is an enamel finished instrument in steel. The other instrument for which they're very famous.
Is that a new one, Steve?
These are new, yes.
Okay.
We also have a totally different voice. Instead of having one large cone, it has 3 little cones inside, and so it's called a tricone.
Now this seems to have a, what's the word, a shallower tone?
Yes, it's a little thinner sounding, but for blues and bottleneck it excels.
Okay.
And that would be the type of use it would have. And this open back 5-string banjos. Banjos, as we said, come in 4 varieties: the tenor, the plectrum, the open back 5-string, and the resonator 5-string. And some of these go back to...
I see some old Vegas up there.
Yeah, this is actually an extremely old Vega.
Very nice
This
one, too.
a beautiful one. This was made in 1924, and it's their top of the line. This is called the Vega. It's number 7 White Lady.
Wow.
And look at that in there.
May I see
Very,
it?
very
I'm a
fancy.
5-string player too. Of a sort.
Have a seat, please.
Of a sort. See if she's a tune. I've never played a...
For the bluegrass player, we have what we believe to be the largest selection of new and previously owned bluegrass banjos in the United States. We try to carry the complete lines of the Gibson Company, which makes the master tone, the Deering Banjo Company of Lemon Grove, California, and the Stelling Banjo Company of Afton, Virginia. They are considered to be the best of the best. There's another brand called Neckville, and what Neckville has done is completely changed the tradition by which banjos are made. He makes a modular instrument using reinforced plastic materials for the shell and enabling the player to go as far as to change a head change a head
I've read about
in
these.
five
I've never
or
seen one.
5 or 6 minutes. It takes about an hour and a half to change a head on a
Yes.
conventional banjo.
No bracket.
Yes,
bracket
exactly.
thing.
It's all self-contained and
Yeah.
you're tightened up with a wrench from inside.
It's got good weight to it.
It does. It's good. Good
Reasonably
bluegrass sound.
priced.
Absolutely.
Very reasonable. And how did the bluegrass players accept the sound of it?
I think gradually the bluegrass players are accepting this brand of banjo. It's not the sound. The sound is brilliant. It's the fact that it's not made with traditional construction. And that's what they have to get used to. There's a certain, in bluegrass especially, there's a strong iconographic nature to what people play. This is our electric listening room. We have electric amplifiers, we have electric basses, and the occasional odd brand of guitar, such as that Dan Armstrong clear lucite guitar that's hanging there, and a Belzuki, which is made by Dan Electro in the 1960s and is dedicated to Vinnie Bell, who was a famous session player. This is our electric room. It's the room of many colors. We carry 3 types of electric guitars. The solid body guitar, as typified by the Fender Stratocaster or the Gibson Les Paul. The semi-hollow guitar, as typified by the Gibson ES335. And then the full-depth archtop electric guitar, as typified by the Gibson ES175, although this is an unusual one. It has a Charlie Christian pickup. This is a more conventional-looking ES175 with tremendous flame maple. All 3 instruments have pickups built into them permanently. This cannot be removed, and also there are knobs that go through the top. And so what you have here is a purely electric instrument. It's not designed so much to be played acoustically. It does have a small amount of volume, certainly enough to practice with. But primarily you plug them into an amp, turn the amp up, and go to town. It sounds tremendous. The state of New York, who have named us to the New York Music Trail. New York has a music trail that corresponds to Boston's Freedom Trail, and it is a list of what they call sites of sound. It is the places that have made New York the birthplace of many different kinds of music. And we are astonished to be part of this, because on this list are places like the John Lennon Memorial at Central Park, the Apollo Theater, the Lincoln Center, Carnegie Hall, and if you look down here,
And Mandolin
you'll
Brothers.
find Mandolin Brothers is on the sites of sound. Well, thank you very
Congratulations,
much.
that's
It's a
wonderful.
real major honor, the kind of thing you don't expect at all.
Well, you're world famous. They might as well recognize
They
it.
have indeed recognized it. This is the last of our 11 rooms, and we call it the high-end room because it contains the most rare and most collectible and most desirable of our instruments. These instruments presently go back as far as 1896, although there have been times when we've had even older instruments than that. But what you're going to find in this room, starting with this wall, is Martin guitars of the golden era, which is the 1930s and 1940s and 1950s, that are made of that elusive Brazilian rosewood that we talked about so fondly earlier. This is Brazilian rosewood. This is one type of it. It says very wide grain. Sometimes you see it with spidery black lines running through it. That's a much more dramatic look of Brazilian than what you expect. I see a number of pre-World War II D18s. Pre-World War II D18s are light as a feather. They weigh almost nothing. They are braced very lightly. They're made with mahogany.
Yes, my goodness.
It's
Yeah.
just what's there. Just the essential braces that are under the top, and the woods for the top and sides and back. Wow.
Now, which are the models that the bluegrass musicians they talk about the pre-war this and the pre-war that?
Well, the D18 and the D28 certainly lead the pack.
D28, yeah. that's the
D28
one.
is the rosewood version of the Dreadnought, and the
Okay.
D18 is the mahogany
Okay.
version. It's so hard to find a guitar that sounds the way this guitar sounds. But in order to get this sound, you have to go back to the World War II, and a lot of the guitars that were made at that time didn't last because they were so lightly built and they were played so hard.
That's still a reasonable price.
It's a reasonable price. This particular one is $4,500. John D'Angelico,
I've heard that name.
who is considered to be one of the greatest builders of archtop guitars of our time. Certainly one of the greatest builders of the 20th century. a handmade instrument. He worked in Kenmare Street in New York City, the area that we call Little Italy.
Now these are carved, are they not?
Yes, they are. They're hand carved out of spruce for the top and out of what we call figured maple, curly maple for the back and the sides. Not tiger striped especially, but has a good deal of curl to it.
So both the top and the bottom have they're like bowed or arched or cut. Yeah,
That's true.
much like a violin.
You start with a piece of wood about this thick, and then you just carve it out and carve it out and carve it out until you have a concavity on one side and a convexity.
And what gives an instrument of this quality, of this level, its sound? The way it's carved, the final dimensions.
It was all done by one person, and he was responsible for every element of it, from the initial carving to the finishing. And he was the designer of its accoutrements.
How many did he make?
He made about 1,100 instruments, and what we find fascinating is that Stradivarius in his lifetime made about 1,100 violins.
How about that?
Isn't that remarkable? One person working full-time at nothing but building that which he loves the most.
Over a career that spanned how many years?
Well, he started in the mid-30s, and he died in 1964.
Okay. And price on this?
Very reasonable. This is a model A1, and it's exactly $10,000. And this is a non-cutaway. When they have a cutaway, they can become a lot more expensive than this.
I'm going to draw another comparison to rifles. Look at what you pay for a Winchester 1 of 1,000. You wouldn't get it for 10 grand.
No, I bet you wouldn't.
One of the old ones.
Nope.
So
we are an underpriced industry. We're still a young industry, the American fretted instrument industry, and bargains at every level can still be had. James D'Acquisto was John D'Angelico's apprentice at first. He came to work for him in the 1950s, and little by little became better and better at building guitars until when John D'Angelico died in 1964, D'Acquisto set out on his own, making somewhat similarly shaped instruments, but gradually evolving the art of doing them into his own design.
you can see a little bit of individualism there. Yeah.
Great deal, and this is an early one actually. As time went on, this was made in 1968, so he had been in business, solely in business, only for 4 years at this time. Wonderful sounding. Very big, very boisterous, a good deal of personality in the tone, and not at all derivative of other makers. And James D'Acquisto, it is felt, overtook his mentor, and eventually is recognized as making the best guitars in his time.
Which would probably have made Mr. D'Angelico very proud.
Very
Yes.
proud,
Yes.
absolutely. This is the original Gibson L5 guitar. Gibson popularized the notion of the archtop F-hole instrument, and a lot of this would not have happened if it wasn't for the influence of a man named Lloyd Lohr, who worked for Gibson as their chief acoustic engineer. Between the years 1921 and 1925, December of 1924 was when he left the company. He signed the labels of the instruments that he had personally tested and approved. It says this instrument is personally tested and approved by Lloyd Lohr, signed and dated, and this is one of his rare L5 guitars. It is felt that he made about 50 L5 guitars. He made about 350 mandolins, which are still considered the best mandolins that have ever been made. And they have simple appointments of dot inlays and a triple bound pickguard and a very simple trapeze tailpiece, an adjustable bridge, which he had a part in designing. The
There's
adjustable
nothing
bridge.
flashy about this.
Nothing
instrument.
at all. No.
Just quality.
That's birch.
Yeah.
That's a birch back, and so they dry it on a birch back rack.
I wish I had a snare drum and a cymbal.
An instrument of this caliber, and it is an absolutely lovely instrument. Big voice for 16 inches. This is only 16 inches wide. But it sounds as big as a lot of 17 and 18. And this is about $40,000. So we're starting.
Oh my
We're
goodness.
starting to get up into the major collector land.
Yeah. Yeah.
Of extremely special importance. If you can focus in on this little picture, you will see Orville Gibson as he looked back when he founded his original company. It was just him as an individual. In 1902, he sold his name and his company to a group of investors in Kalamazoo, Michigan, and they founded the Gibson Corporation. Orville Gibson was not a principal in the original Gibson Corporation. He was a consultant, and he actually remained in Kalamazoo for some time to help them start and keep the designs evolving. But before he founded that company, he was an independent luthier working alone in a shop.
I didn't know that.
And when a person came in, he would ask them, as luthiers do today, what would you like? How would you like it to look? How would you like it to be appointed? This is an original handmade Orville Gibson mandolin. You're certainly not going to find a lot of these around. There are very few of them around. It's extremely thick. It's called a pan back because he believed that the instrument should have a deeper body. And so he graduated the back so as to make it a flat back with curved sides below the sides, the actual sides of the instrument. He also had a very high arch on the top, much higher than modern instruments have. And so he couldn't have a high bridge. You can't have a high bridge and a high top. You had to have a low bridge and have a high top. In order to accommodate a low bridge, you had to have your neck angle set back a little bit further than a modern neck angle would be. And look at that angle.
I was going to say, it's almost like a
lute.
Yes,
it's like he was still in that notion of the original 1800 style designs of what came before. It's got the crown-shaped tailpiece cover, which was the earlier tailpiece cover. And on the label it says, O.H. Gibson Luthier, Kalamazoo, Michigan, and his picture's on the label. We find this utterly fascinating. Not designed so much to be played. The modern player would not find this to be interesting at all. But as a statement of musical history, it's remarkable.
Yes. Yes. Is that for display only?
No, it has a price of $25,000, and I'm hopeful that no one will ever buy it. But if anyone does, it's available. It's here.
That's.
We're almost to the close of our tour. There are some instruments that we don't put on display because they're either so very rare or in such mint condition that we can't have customers touching them. Everything else, 95% of what we have, anyone can come in and play, and we're happy that they can try them out. Everyone's very respectful of our instruments. They're very cautious. It has a museum feel, this store. And we've never run into trouble with that, so we'll keep up having access to our instruments. There's not a single glass locked cabinet in this place.
No, everything here is, it says, come, touch me, get to know me. I haven't seen anyone here
with a casual attitude.
Yeah, yes. They come in and they touch these instruments.
They're very, very respectful of how we keep them and how well they are maintained.
I find it to be very comforting, and this is a neat place.
Yes, thanks. We've always thought so ourselves.
If you can get here.
From anywhere.
From anywhere.
Any place on earth.
And I know they visit from everywhere.
We had a gentleman visit from Cairo last week.
Yes.
It was good. Good to see him.
And believe me, I saw Stan welcome everyone who came in while he was out there the same way he welcomed us. I hope Patrick isn't too tired to pick a little bit before we hit the road.
Well, we can.
Try a couple of those nationals out there.
Sure. No, you're welcome to play all of them.
And what a wonderful place. Now you also do repairs, do you?
Yes, we have a complete repair shop down in the basement, and we have 3 full-time repair people. We don't do finishing. That's one thing we can't do. We can do any structural repair that's required.
So if something's broken or
if it needs even up to the level where it needs its neck reset, we can do that.
Okay. And again, over the phone, always helpful. If somebody calls up and says, I'm looking for something, but I'm not quite sure.
Exactly. We will talk with them and try to pinpoint what it is they're seeking and what the choices are in that category and discuss it fully.
And once you ship an instrument, as I remember.
Yes, there's a 3-day approval period, and someone can try it out and determine if they like it. And if they like it, call us up and say, I love this. You're never going to see it again. But if for any reason they didn't, they would just call us and say, I'm returning it. And we'll give them a return authorization number that they write on the label. They can bring it to UPS. It's not costly to ship an instrument. You may think so, but it's about $25.
Yes, I've found that to be.
From anywhere in the contiguous United States.
And it's well worth it, the peace of mind knowing it's probably harder to bring an instrument back to a fairly small music shop where, they don't do that.
UPS is in every city, and all you have to do is drive the box there, and they'll be happy to take it from you and insure it very reasonably.
But the way you describe your instruments, I know when I ordered my Martin tenor, it was exactly as described. There was no surprises at all.
We make sure of that.
So, and if you can explain it to me so I understand it, anybody can understand it. Can I ask you a question?
Sure, yes.
One of the things we like to do towards the end of an interview is have the person we're talking to look at the audience. There's going to be a lot of young people looking at these things. What would you say to someone looking to buy their first or second musical instrument, how far should they go? You touched on it earlier,
Sure.
but give them a little
We
encouragement.
talk to people all the time about choosing a fine instrument, and the adage that rings the most resonant with the most resonance for most buyers is, get the best instrument you can afford. The money will be long forgotten, but you'll keep that instrument, hopefully, your entire life. And when you think about it, spending enough money to get an American brand made of solid woods if possible, made with a comfortable low playing action that allows you to play the instrument in every fret position effortlessly, that is made with a fine finish and an adjustable truss rod, hopefully, will maintain, with a brand name that not only you know, but everyone knows, is what's going to give you the most happiness over the longest period of time. And as I said earlier, every time you open that case, you should be infused with a sense of, this is wonderful. I have made a great decision. I love seeing this. I love picking it up. I love playing it. But best of all, it makes me creative. It makes me want to play. It makes me want to spend more time doing what I have the most fun doing, and that is to make music. And ultimately, that's what all of this is about, is just being good at what you do and getting better at it and making beautiful music. I've always said that there's nothing nicer in an acoustic guitar than the sound of two acoustic guitars played together in harmony, and that's mostly what I do. I try to get together with friends, and we still take out our guitars and pick way into the night playing the songs that we have learned from the last 30, 40 years and loving every minute of it. And if any of our customers buys an instrument from us and ultimately can do that, get together with friends and play their songs and have a ball every single time you pick it up, then we've accomplished our objective, which is to fulfill the dreams of each person who comes to us either in person or by mail order or by telephone or by internet, and to make it possible to own an instrument that you'll keep for your entire lifetime.
Very well put. I want to add one more thing. It's been my pleasure to meet with you again after all these years. And I can't say enough about your place. The instruments are beautiful. The sense of time in this room is unbelievable. And everywhere, just quality, the sounds of people testing them, people answering questions. Get here if you can. If you can't, get to the website.
Which we should point out is MandoWeb, MandoWeb.com.
And get to know what good is, as they say up in the Pennsylvania Dutch country.
That's what they say.
And this is a classy operation. You're making a difference.
Well, thanks.
And thank you for what you've done, and let's hope it continues far into the future.
Yes, we expect that, actually. Thank you very much.
Okay?
Yep.